gradually, and it's becoming very interesting. Um, well, I was thinking that fine, we are in a crisis, but without the crisis, we would have run a budget anyway. So, if we want to be more transparent about how we are spending the funds that are getting to us due to COVID-19, we could have separated it from the main budget and do a separate aspect for COVID-19, how it has been managed so far, the inflows that are coming in as a result of COVID-19, and the outflows. Then we all know how much government has received. This is what it is being spent on, and so on. Now,
I think those details are all in the media budget too.
yes, I'm not saying that they are not in the budget. They're in the budget, but the way and manner it is captured, right, doesn't make it clear enough for any person at all looking at the budget, going through it to see that, okay, COVID-19 brought in A, B, C, D, and we have used it for so and so, and this is how much we are left with. The effect of that is also that we are not able to, for instance, maybe decouple or do a separate analysis of the finance minister's request in terms of funding and expenditure. For instance, without COVID-19, we would have run a budget. The finance minister over, I think, for the past 3 years, have been prudent when it comes to fiscal discipline. What I've seen so far is that anytime he realizes that revenues are going down, he finds a way of trying to realign expenditure to accommodate those falls. What is he doing this time? Your revenue projection is not going to be met. You are revising it downwards, and you are increasing expenditure. You are increasing expenditure because of COVID-19. But let us not kid ourselves. All the increases or the additional requirements that the finance minister is asking for is not going for to fight COVID-19. It is also for other reasons. For instance, if you look at the budget, we've seen some huge increases, about 4 billion Ghana cedis in interest payment expenditure. That is what it is being projected. That is what is being projected at the end of the year, that we may likely to overspend on what we have already budgeted for what? Income, what's the name? Interest payments. Why is it so? And for me, the disappointing thing for me here is the lack of policy measures to at least draw in more revenue. Look, we are in a crisis. Everybody understands that. We are going to spend more. We understand. However, there is no need for us to use the crisis to do things that will make it difficult for us to recover after the COVID-19 pandemic the way we should. I heard the finance minister mention the German situation where the chancellor said nobody should talk to her about fiscal deficit. Yes, she made those points, but her circumstances may be different from us. For instance, the size of the German economy is not the same as the Ghanaian economy. Their potential or their task effort is not the same as our task effort. Their ability to go into the international market or their ability to accommodate the debts, we are not in the same capacity as them. So we cannot try to copy whatever they are going to do or whatever they are doing. If you remember 2017, one of the issues we had in this country, the most important one for government when they came in, was the fiscal space they had. It was very difficult for them to have any meaningful policy going forward without adjusting the fiscal system. Now, we are going to borrow more. I'm not saying it is in the budget, because if you are running a larger deficit, it essentially means that what? You are going to borrow. So we are borrowing more. We are locking ourselves up for the future, because at the end of the day, if we are not able to, let's even look at it again, the expenditure that we are doing currently is not something that will bring in more revenue to more or less help us fund obligations when they come. What's the name?
Are we losing Emmanuel?
It's on recurrent expenditure. Therefore, I don't see the need for us to be choking up ourselves because of COVID-19. Forget with us all the time. COVID-19 will end one day, and because we have not managed our situations very well, we don't have the need and manage the way we should. Let me give you another example. Now, if you are in a situation where you are managing a crisis, I think one of our colleagues mentioned a situation where you want to manage issues and make sure that you don't go into a recession. Please, even the world economy is not going into a recession. I'm not sure anybody has said that the world economy will go into a recession. For 2020, the economies may contract, but that is not a recession. So why the need for you to maybe try and see if you do things and make sure you don't go into a recession? Nobody is going into a recession. Even if you look at the analysis so far, the recovery is likely to go, or what the recovery from the crisis is likely to be a U-shape or a V-shape, because everybody is expected to grow next year. So
so from what Elliot you've said so far, it comes in sharp contrast, if I'm not wrong, to what Nanayaw explained, even though both of you have kind of ends, so where you are suggesting that maybe more should be explained in terms of the government expenditure and the reasoning behind it, and how we should be cautious not to overspend and dig to the extent that maybe in future we might not be able to recover easily from what we do. And Nanayaw is explaining that government being the biggest spender needs to stimulate the economy and keep in terms of we trying to stimulate the economy and not trying to overspend.
Okay, yeah, I think it is essentially that, because as he said, government is the biggest spender in the economy, and we know how our economy depends on government expenditure to propel growth. That is fine. However, don't spend in a way to put your future at risk.
I get that point, Emmanuel. I get that point clearly. I'm coming to Elliot. What do you make of the two sides of the coin?
Yeah, as I said initially, I mentioned that indeed the COVID-19 is having a serious implication on both economic and other sectors as well. And if you look at developing countries specifically where unemployment is high, then the effect of this pandemic is very huge, okay, compared to other advanced countries. Now, for the advanced countries, what I can say is that because they have a well-structured economy where they have data, and indeed they can track where the changes are coming from or the sectors that are hugely affected, they can easily come out with policies that they can used to improve the economic situation of their citizens. Here, for example, they have a policy called JobKeeper, okay, where the government is actually increasing the kind of unemployment benefit. Even if you lose your job, the government is going to pay you, and that is an increase in expenditure. There is also a situation where people are made to withdraw up to $10,000 from their superannuation. In Ghana, we call it the social security contribution. Okay, that is also a policy where government is trying to let the citizens withdraw from their own savings, but not necessarily the government being injecting or increasing its expenditure. So in Ghana, in our situation, it's a bit different, where we have the majority of Ghanaians not being working in the public sector. Most of them are not also contributing to the social security. Some of them don't even have a savings account where they can draw from. So this situation calls for other means of trying to support those who have lost their job, those who are not even working. Remember when the president announced that we should lock down the economy, okay, people started complaining about the fact that they are not going to get work, they are going to find it difficult to fend for themselves, etc. Okay, so the adverse effect of the COVID-19 in Ghana is huge. But I think what is missing, okay, is that we throw figures as in the amount of money we spent, but the detail is what is missing, okay? And I'm not surprised because, like I said, you can't actually track who is benefiting and who is not benefiting. Okay, so it's more of we are spending this amount of money and you can't know the details of what is actually the money that is being spent on. So from what I said initially, yes, we have to be very careful about our expenditure, okay, going forward. But that does not also imply that the government should not spend, because at the end of the day...
Are we losing Elliot?
No, Elliot is talking.
Okay, so at the end of the day, yes, we should continue to spend to ensure that the economy will not run into recession, okay. But there is the need to also be disciplined in terms of our expenditure.
Ravi, can I make a point with respect to what Emmanuel said? So
2 points are not much. Yao. Okay.
Sorry, I didn't get you.
So I was basically saying Elliot has summed the 2 points up, and he's suggesting that the 2 points are not mutually exclusive. Government can look out and ensure they stimulate the economy by spending, but also be prudent enough to ensure we don't dig ourselves into it. But the question, this question is going to both. You have a point to make?
Yes. So I mean, in all these discussions, let's also look at the political side. I mean, if I was the finance minister, let's take it that if I am a finance minister, I'm in an election year, 4 months away, I'm to present a budget. Do you expect me to present a budget that is saying that I'm not going to spend, I'm going to squeeze? You won't. And the key to every political party is to win power. So in an election year, the finance minister presenting this to parliament, in his mind is looking at a budget that can win me the next election. So it is putting in place certain measures that would ease the burden on the citizenry as a result of COVID-19. So I agree with what Emmanuel said about expenditure, Germany having the necessary measures to be able to recover easily than Ghana. But let's take it like government spent 1 billion on electricity subsidy. I disagree with maybe the method they did it, but underlining this budget is that it's an election year. The finance minister would have presented a different budget with different numbers, assuming it was their first year in, let's say, 2021, when whoever wins power. So I just want us to situate that in the discussion, and let's not forget the political side and just look at it from an economics side. And the other bit too is that individuals are not spending. So the private sector is not spending. You need to let money flow. People should feel that there's money in the system. And the only way you can do that is the government is the one that's going to spend. So when it comes to the expenses, they should be measured, but the government still needs to spend so that we don't head into, he might disagree with the recession, but the World Bank is predicting that if government don't put in step these measures, we would hit the recession. So though no one is saying that there will be recession, but they are saying that if you don't put in certain measures, there would be a recession, which would be greater than anything that has been seen during peacetime.
So Nana Yao has basically given us political economy 101 for everybody listening to understand that it's not just economics, but it's playing out with the politics on one side and the economics on another side. So we shouldn't just look at the issues without putting it in context. And he has just laid it all out, the media budget. In terms of the political economy of the decisions that inform the spending that we are seeing by the finance. Now, Emmanuel raised a crucial point where he spoke about the expenditure. That has also been mentioned by wondering where the funds would come to fill up the gap that we are seeing with regards to the deficit figures. Is it normal to have a mid-year budget presented where people will be questioning where the funds would be coming from? Emmanuel, you can take this. I'll come to Nana Yao and see if Bernard, you have something to say about it.
I thought I was going to take this.
Please come again.
Yes, Yao. No, Yao. This is going to Yao.
Okay. Okay. So just to pick up from where Emmanuel, I think I'll agree with Emmanuel, just that he was adding so much of emotions to what he was saying, making this.
How do you conclude that he was adding emotions?
There's no hard feeling.
Okay, so
no, Emmanuel, you don't mind him. Don't mind him. This
just by the side, but I think the pertinent question to ask is, I think you even pointed it rightly that yes, so government intends to spend more. I think the supplementary budget they sent was about 11 billion in terms of expenditure. They are going to spend more in terms of expenditure. So the question probably you want to ask is where they are going to get the funds from, or how it's going to be financed, and how it's going to be spent. Okay, so if you look at the budget, the summary side, my concern basically is if you look at the domestic, in terms of the financing, government intends to, borrow from domestic markets an amount of 32 billion. Hitherto, the previous budget that they brought, it was about 15 billion, and now they are saying that they are going to do 32 billion. And if you look at the total financing, it's about 44 billion. So it presupposes that how government is going to fund this excess expenditure, about 72% of this funding is going to come from the domestic markets. So it's two sides. So if I was a bank, I mean, banks would want to cash in on this, because at the end of the day, most banks or most commercial banks will prefer to invest, because of course government is going to get this funding through the issuance of bond. Most banks will prefer to invest more in government bonds than giving their money to the private sector. It means that it's going to crowd out the private sector in terms of facilities, giving out facilities or credits. And in terms of spending, so yeah, that was my main take from the financing part. In terms of how government is going to spend this budget, I think it gave us a list of items on what it intends to do. But what struck me most was, I think during one of government's presentation, the fellow Ghanaians presentation, government said it was going to invest in government said it was going to invest in hospitals. I think 88 hospitals or so. But if you look at the health infrastructure, the amount of money that has been earmarked for it is about 600 million Ghana cedis, which I think is woefully inadequate. And if you look at the other ones like sanitation, I think the huge chunk of the money is going to stimulus packages through the accelerated payments of outstanding claims. But I mean, if you've come out to say that you're going to invest more in infrastructure, especially in health, and you are earmarking about 600 million for that, I think well, maybe it was a political statement, I mean, to believe in. And coming straight back to the CST, if you look closely at the revenue figures, government intends to reduce the CST tax from 9% to 5%. But if you look at the actual numbers, it means that CST per the budget, which was about 436, government is saying that I'm revising it to 575, which presupposes that yes, government, even though government is reducing the tax from 9 to 5%, they are still expecting to get more, probably because of the fact that now a lot more people are hooked onto the internet. So of course, if I reduce the tax, I'm still going to get more. So I think that this reduction, well, to me, is a facade. I mean, to the people might think that yes, there's been a reduction in the percentage, but then nominal numbers, you realize that government is actually expecting more from the CST, which I think it's very key. And to add to what I think Nanayao said about the fact that government needs to spend, of course, if you look at the normal, like any economist will say, a normal growth, if you look at the indicator for growth, there's consumption, there's investment, there's government spending, and then there's the export and import. So government have realized that, yes, okay, there's not, private consumption is down because, of course, people do not have money. Firms will not be able to invest. So what I have to do to boost the economy is just to spend. So that 0.9% that they've estimated, trust me, if they don't spend, probably they might not get to that target. So maybe that would be the reason why government would want to pump more money into the economy, just to, you know, let the AD or the growth rates go up, basically. So that's my take.
Okay.
Yep. And
Bernard,
Abi,
yeah. So I think just to add to what Yao has said, if you're looking at how the deficit will be financed, it also brings a cause to worry, to the extent that if you look at it seems we are doing a budget deficit in figure terms about 44 billion cedis, in excess of 44 billion cedis. And we are looking at domestic financing being the major chunk. If you are looking at 2017, 2018, 2019, the activeness or participation of government in the domestic market was very low. But in 2020, because of COVID-19, for the past 4 months, the government has been the #1 player in the domestic market. So you see the bond industry or the bond sector of Ghana going a little bit higher because the government is borrowing more. If that happens, it means there might be other counterproductive results that we will get, because the government is trying to stimulate private sector growth. And in the same instance, so he is giving you something with the left hand and he's taking something with the right hand. Because if you are stimulating private sector growth, it means you have to leverage, you have to make the banks have that free hands to advance credit to the private sector. But you are also going to be an active participant in the bond market, because if you are looking at the foreign market, it will not be a very viable attempt to do, because everybody is kind of in crisis. And a lot of people are even drawing their portfolio investments from Ghana. So if you are a portfolio investor in the foreign land, you are withdrawing your portfolio investment, and you are going to look out for, if coronavirus kills everybody, maybe you keep your money in your pillow in US and die with your money, rather than letting your money rot in Ghana. And another source of worry is that 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019. 2016, we were doing interest payment a little below 12 billion cedis. But in 2019, we are doing interest payment of 19 billion cedis. In 2020, we earmarked about 22, 23 billion cedis, but the media review is telling us that interest payment will be 26 billion cedis. that 26 billion cedis aside compensation and other kind of thing is the number 3. So if you are looking at top 3 expenditure of government, interest payment features. And this is a country that does not have the money. And here is the case, we are going to even borrow more for the next 4 or 5 months, to borrow more to finance the gap. It means the interest payment for 2020, 2021 might be hitting the roof. And if that happens, it also tells us that the government will not have that money to undertake a certain or some kind of development projects it wants to undertake. So if you are borrowing, it's good to borrow, but what happens to the other sectors must also be considered. The last bit about the Operation 111 project, I think the reason why the government earmarked 600 million cedis is that if you're looking at 2020 is almost done. And this Operation 111 will start in August. So for this budget, you just have about just 3 months to start the process, because they are trying to start the process of about 88 district hospitals. And in 2021, I am sure the other expenditure will feature in the 2021 budget, not necessarily to a 2020 budget. But you have to also say that in all these things, what will be the kind of role the private sector will play? Because you are telling us that there is Operation 111, the construction sector, that is the Ghanaian construction industry, will be having the contracts to put or execute these projects. I ask you, which kind of contractors will have that contract? Are these political contractors, real business contractors? How would this kind of money, because now we are in a crisis. So if we are eating, we should all be eating one way or the other. But if the food gets to just one dining table and the rest of us kind of grossling, there will be that kind of pent-up feelings. So I think if you are a contractor, if you are in the building industry, you have to be able to position yourself, assuming every kind of level playing field will be put in place so that those who deserve the contract and those who are not perhaps having the expertise will also have some subcontracts to do, so that you have, as Nanaya said, if you are spending, those people who will get the money will also spend, and the cascading effect will kind of engender the kind of growth that we need.
Rabi,
let me do a bit about on the
before you come in, Ima. So I'll go around, so I pick all of you your thoughts, and it would be your concluding remarks. So Ima, whatever you would say, if you could join it in with your perspective on the 1 billion COVID-19 fund.
100 billion.
A 100 billion COVID-19 fund.
But the first question is there 100 billion COVID-19 fund?
Hey, Ben.
No, that's the first question. Because
it's going to be a 3 years.
Please,
do you want to jump in? Ima
no, we have to put things in perspective.
Yeah, so
Ben, when it gets to your turn, then you put it in perspective.
When it gets to your turn, you put it in your perspective.
Because I think there's
already
19 fund.
Already Ben has helped us understand that we have political contractors and businessmen contractors. But let's move on from there. Ima, please take your.
Let's look at the budget deficit. We budgeted 18.9 billion in the original budget. Now, we are expecting to do almost about more than 44 billion.
Yeah.
That takes the difference to about 25 billion. Meanwhile, the additional budget for the COVID-19 fight is around 11.8 billion. So you see, the 13 extra is coming from revenue. And I'm asking, your revenue is falling. Do you necessarily have to undertake other expenditures? Can't you realign just like the way you used to so that you can contain the expenditure better, even though COVID-19 is coming in. So my point is that we are doing 25 billion extra, only 11.8 is for COVID-19. The extra is coming from the revenue shortfalls. Why can we realign the expenditure to accommodate the 13 billion extra that is coming, the shortfall that is coming from the revenue side? Even if you are not going to do full adjustment to make sure that you take care of the entire 13 billion, I mean, you can do a bit of adjustment, maybe 9 or 10. At this point, no matter how small it is, everybody will appreciate it. Secondly, you are seeking to do your budget, the deficit finance. Initially, you were doing 56% international and 44% domestic. Now you are doing 44% domestic and 36% international. That is clear. You know that the international market is going to be bad for you, so you will not even want to go. Everybody is looking inwardly now to fight the COVID and also make sure that they revive their economies. This is not going to be like this only in 2020. Maybe for the next 3 years, every country will want to rebuild. So that capital market participation is going to be a non-starter for you, maybe at least for the next 3 years. Are you going to continue borrowing domestically for the next 3 years? What do you think will be the impact on private sector and even on the government its own policies? One district, one factory. All these companies, one way or the other, need to be funded by the banks. Now you are going to compete with those companies for the same funds that will be available to the banks. And everybody, if you're a banker, you will know. You don't even need to be a banker to know that banks want to go into where the risk is low. So, fine. I want to give it to a private person who will give me 28%, but government is giving me 14%, and the risk is low. I'm not talking about non-performing loans and the rest. So I'll go for it. So that is the issue that government will be dealing with for the next 3 years: budget deficit financing, interest payment obligations. These are the issues that government will be dealing with going forward. The flip side will be that, well, you may not have interest payment obligations which will be skewed towards international entities, which also mean that you may not have so much pressure on your currency due to interest payment obligations. However, look, we all know that this CD depreciation, appreciation, or whatever it means, for me, those arguments, I don't buy it. Nobody wants a CD to be depreciating or appreciating at every time. We all want a stable currency, which is good for everybody to plan ahead. Whether the CD is tomorrow it depreciates, tomorrow it appreciates. Nobody wants that. We want it to be stable. I think Ben was talking about injecting liquidity. Fine. You are going to inject liquidity, which is a good thing. But the point is, what is the injection or the extra cash we are giving to the economy going to be used for? Let me give you a typical example. So you have a small economy that produces, all that we produce is what? 3 phones. 3 phones. And within a space of time, we can what? Everybody can purchase that 3 phones. We will not have any of it left. It will be sold. Then the government of that small economy decides that I'm going to give you more money. Meanwhile, for one reason or the other, the economy is not in position to what? Produce more than 3 phones. We are still producing the same 3 phones. At the end of the day, we will have more cash in our hands, but the commodities that we are supposed to use, we are supposed to use the extra funding on, may not be available. What happens? Inflation. So if you are injecting more money into the economy and it is not to the point where you increase production, then you should brace yourself for what? Inflationary pressures. Then all of a sudden you see the central bank coming in to do what? Contractionary monetary policy,
Okay.
which is not good for anyone. Let me give you one. Let me also run up on only one point on the
Deficit
expenditure.
financing.
Not necessarily about the deficit financing. I'm looking at how we structure our whole.
Ima, if you can wrap up in a minute.
Okay, Rabi. Take a look at how much
It's so
projection
dramatic.
we are making for emolument compensations. We are increasing the allocation to compensation, meaning that we'll be paying people more. But what are we doing? We are reducing the expenditure on goods and services. These are the tools and the logistics public servants use for their
It could mean
work.
that we'll be employing more.
Yes. So if you are employing more and you are reducing the things that people will be working with, why are you employing them in the first place?
They will spend.
Anyway, Rabi, I'm done.
Yeah, seems to like to provoke you, so you don't mind. let me.
Rabi, can I come in?
Go to Yao. Yes. No, let me go to Yao to get his concluding remarks. Then I come to you.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Rabi. I think the discussions have been very rich. I'm impressed. I've learned a lot. But in terms of concluding remarks, I think for me, I didn't watch the finance minister. I just read excerpts, but really the excerpts that I was thinking that he presented with some level of optimism and hope that all was going to be well. Presented with some kind of optimism or hope that all was going to be well. Of course, we've gotten some grants in. My hope and my prayer is that those grants will be used judiciously in terms of the COVID-19 fund and the 100 million World Bank support. My prayer and my hope is that it will be channeled to the healthcare system. I think that the 600 million that has been earmarked is too small, it's inadequate. And I want to believe that every grant we've received, in respect of this pandemic, will be used for that purpose. And I think that would be my conclusion, Max.
So I have advised that we stop. I have advised that we stop talking in vacuum and speak directly to the figures and data available. So we know of some of the funds that have come in: 100 million World Bank support, 600 million from the 1 billion from the World Bank. Also, we know of the funds, and now we know of some of the expenditure that has been done: 52 million for feeding the vulnerable during the lockdown. Speak directly to these figures and don't say we pray and hope that it will be used judiciously.
Give me 1 minute.
What do you
Just give me 1 minute. Let me read that part of the budget.
No, Ima, let Yao finish what he's saying.
I think you can let Ima exhaust his point.
I can exhaust
Ima has been so emotional in his presentation. I just wanted to lighten his mood.
You know that I made
yeah. Yeah, I'm listening to you. So 600 million from the stabilization fund, 100 million from the World Bank, 1 billion from the IMF. All these funds we've gotten them. We've been told a bit of how much has been expended so far, and the specific one that has generated lots of controversy is the 52 million Ghana cedis for feeding the vulnerable during the 3-week lockdown. What do you make of these figures? Realistic figures that have been made public, official.
I think sincerely, just to be fair to government, I listened to the deputy finance minister, and he was like, "Oh, they will come out and then give the specifics as to how they spent the 54 million." Because, of course, like many other Ghanaians, I heard some people making commentaries that if you spend 54 million in providing for food and all those things, why won't you pay those monies to people's accounts, like what India and other countries also did? But of course, I mean, just to be fair to them, they said they'll come out and then they will give the specific details to them. I don't have those figures now, so I can't really speak to them. Yeah.
Okay, so then let me go to Nanaya.
Yeah, so Rabi, I want to make a basis for what I'm going to say, that the government, when MPP came, they've been able to maintain a bit of fiscal discipline in terms of the budget deficit they've achieved. So 3% in 2018, 2.8 in 2019, and 2020 they budgeted 4.7. So in terms of
hold on
with that budget.
Hold on, the figures you are hold on, the figures you are quoting. Are you sure about the figures? Because we know that some figures were mentioned and they excluded the banking crisis, the financial sector cost, and the energy sector cost.
So Rabi, yeah, so this is numbers. So this is numbers exclusive of the financial sector cleanup.
But why would we want to use numbers exclusive of the financial sector cost if it was part of expenditure for the year?
It is one that you say are extraordinary events. So when I make it, just as if I was analyzing the performance of MPP in 2020 against another country, I was okay, let me strip out those one-off expenses and let's do a like-for-like analysis. So I agree that we need to have a holistic budget deficit, but in terms of this analysis, that's why I said I'm making a point. So if I was making if it was another discussion, I would have brought that up. But the point that I'm making, I need to take out that number.
Okay.
So in terms of fiscal discipline, it's not that the finance minister has gone overboard. He has proven in the past that he sticks with, he is prudent in expenditure. So he's done 3%, 2.8 for 2020. They budgeted 4.7. COVID comes in, shoots it up to 11.8. He knows that there's a Fiscal Responsibility Act. He came, said we need to put that aside. So with that in context, in terms of the expenditure, what we could have done to be able to manage expenditure, one area that I thought we could have is to consider the teacher training allowance, which has cost the country over 1 billion Ghana cedis. So it is one that moving forward, can we then as a country say that, look, we are in extraordinary times. These are expenditures that we could probably make some savings, because it's costing you 1 billion over 3 years. 3 SHS costs you over 3.5. So that's like 30% gone to a project that you could easily have saved if you had not reversed the policy that a previous government had been putting in place. So these are things that as we move forward and we recover, we need to look at some expenses that the government is making and find out whether we need to revisit them. Then the other bit is that in terms of expenditure, that if I was the finance minister, always I put myself out in the shoes, there's no way I would have also reduced expenditure in certain areas, because one, salary is fixed. If you look at the components of our budget, salary is fixed, interest payments is fixed. Those constitute the highest expenses we make. Capital expenditure in an election year, you don't want to touch that, because you know that all the debate now is infrastructure. So you also want to make sure you go on with a year of roads. So in terms of the room that the finance minister had, he had very limited room in terms of reducing expenditure. Fortunately for us, a lot of money is coming in. IMF has given 1 billion, about in cedi terms 5.8 billion. AFDB is given 406. We have the Bank of Ghana also financing government of over 10 billion. So not all the 25 or 44 billion will be borrowed from the private sector. A part of it will be donor funded. What we know is that, as the president will say that you need to make sure the ultimate aim of the government is to make sure that the citizens, to take care of the well-being of the citizens. And in times like this, Ghana, it's not alone in this. Every other country is putting in place measures to make sure that its citizens have the bearers of the bearers of comfort that they need. So the finance minister comes out with the unemployment benefits, and that's one that we would need more information as to how it will be distributed. We all know that in an election year, the tendency might be that it might go to areas where you think these are people that in a way could be termed as vote buying, if you want to term that, because you don't know how it's being channeled, you don't have the data. So these are the expenditure. What's
the definition for who is that? Who who is unemployed in Ghana? Maybe I should start by asking those here who amongst us is unemployed, but I'll raise my hand.
No, you're employed. You only need grants.
Ghana Factor has employed you.
So, Rabbi, to conclude, I would say that what the finance minister presented the media, but it didn't come as a surprise to me in terms of the requesting for additional funds, because his goal also is to make sure that the economy doesn't contract. He also needs to make sure that as an election year, the government is spending and it puts the party in a good position, his party in a good position to win the election. And if you look at the concluding statement that the finance minister had, that tells you what the idea he had in putting this budget together was to present a government that cares. And a government that cares in an election year is a government that will spend and put money in people's pockets. So definitely, I know 2021, whichever government wins, we all should tighten our belts. There would be a squeeze, taxes will be increased, and unfortunately, it will be the middle class, those who government have their data, that will be taxed more. So in that regard, one area that the government needs to focus more is the property tax, and the real estate sector increase and the service sector increase. We're able to tax service sector, but the real estate, it's an area that increasingly, you see that government are not doing much effort. They're not taking that effort to tax that sector of the economy. And also the online business. I mean, now if you want to do wedding, you just have to go to Instagram. You see the number of vendors there. How are we doing? What are we doing to make sure that we bring all these people and they pay taxes? And that is why the reduction of the CSC from 9% to 5% is laudable. I wish it was even scrapped, because you've noticed that when they reduce it, they are increasing their revenue. What it means is that if you even make it 1% and more people are hooked onto the, in terms of using internet, they are going to generate a bit more. It's an enabler, so more people would be spending. There'll be more activity, and as a country that is driven by services, you need to communicate. You need that IT backbone to be able to provide whatever service you are making. So that'll be my concluding remarks.
Please, conclusion should be
Nanaya, you have a lot to say. You have a lot to say, considering you are not surprised by what was detailed in the mid-year budget. I'm not surprised also that you had a lot to say and share on the subject, considering you were once a politician back in school, and you've mixed that with your professional financial life, and now have to put things into perspective, political economy of the mid-year budget. Thank you very much. Let me move on to Elliot. Elliot, what are your concluding remarks? And if you could situate it within the 100 billion COVID-19 fund.
Well, I think what the finance minister presented in terms of that figure is, I would say, is the right way to do, because every government would want to show its citizens that there is hope, okay, and that they also care about the economy. They also care about the jobs, and also to ensure that some companies or maybe other small scale enterprises are running or not, go into bankrupt. Now, if you look at the distribution of the 100 billion cedis, you will notice that the finance minister presented that they will use some to support small scale businesses, which is good, because if it indeed is used to support the small scale enterprises, and it means that the private sector employment will not, the private sector will still hold on to their employment and then will not reduce or cause or increase the private sector unemployment. Again, you will notice that they mentioned something on unemployment insurance scheme, okay, which I'm not too sure about how that is going to be run. But if having these policies, like, it points to the right direction, that indeed the government cares about the citizens. There is also something like 100 create 100 cedis fund for labor and faith-based organization for retraining and skills development. Again, this one too is more debatable because you kind of wonder what training they are going to provide. And because these policies signifies, like, it gives hope, okay? It's kind of pointing to the right direction that every government is aiming at ensuring that at least the economy keeps on running, okay? But as to the specificity and where this money is going to and how it is going to spend, that is where we should focus and ensure that these amounts that have been allocated to transform the economy is indeed going into the sector, so that at the end of the day, we will generate the returns that is expected. If it turns out that these monies are channeled to, because we are in a political election year, they are channeled to other unnecessary or areas that wouldn't yield any high benefits, then I think the country is going to be in a serious situation, because at the end of the day, these monies have to be accounted for, and it is the same citizens who are going to pay for the money. So it's good.
Okay.
We have a good future, I must say, in this critical era. Again, it's up to us to ensure that we keep the government on its toes, also ensure that they spend as they have specified in the budget. Again, I will say that it is left to us, okay, to come up and have some discussions on how these monies are being spent, and also to raise critical questions about critical questions regarding the expenses that the government is making, especially when we are in an election year. Okay.
Election year. Sure. Then finally, let me come to Bernard. Bernard, can you give us your concluding remarks? Everything under 2 minutes.
I think 2 minutes will be impossible, because we just have to state whether there is 100 billion cedis care fund or not.
And you can't say that in under 2 minutes. Why?
No,
what are you going to tell us?
It will be very difficult to say that under 2 minutes, because the fact of the matter
You've
is,
already eaten 30 seconds of your time.
Thank you for helping me to
Rabi,
eat
there are no
another 15
sponsors on this
seconds.
program.
So the fact of the matter is, as stated in the budget, there is no 100 billion CD care fund. Because if you look at the care program, it is divided into two. We have the stabilization and the revitalization. The revitalization looks at the midterm. That's from 2021 to 2023. If you look at the stabilization, you can assign monetary values to some of the items listed under stabilization. You have the NBSSI, giving them money to give to the small, medium, micro sector. And for that, as Elliot said, I think it's very laudable, to the extent that in the first program, the government earmarked 600 million cedis. But when application was opened, the amount that was applied for was in excess of 7.6 billion cedis. So 7.6 billion cedis need, but the availability fund, that the fund available was just 600. So adding extra 100 or 150 million cedis to the small scale sector is, to me, is very sensible, because they control about 70% of our economy. So if you have to meet them halfway, one way or the other, you'll be able to propel that sector to bring about the kind of development you want to see. You have also financing using the government's purchasing power to support the local sector, especially the garment sector. And you see that COVID-19 has at least shown us that if the state is to leverage on its purchasing power, we can see some level of robust economy, to the extent that the pharmaceutical industry is you talk of Tobinco producing chloroquine and other pharmaceutical industries helping in one way or the other. You have the hand sanitizer business booming, the nose mask business booming. All these things are small businesses that will promote the kind of employment that you need. You have the 111, but the real details will be in the revitalization sector. And the revitalization, a lot of these things stated under revitalization are simply campaign promises. And they are things that have been stated over and over the years. I will state 2 or 3 so that for the sake of time, we just leave. Right from Setekpe through to Kenoforiata, every budget from 2014 has aimed at making Ghana financial hub of West Africa and Africa. And especially with AFCFTA, that interest has been echoed since 2018. So if there is a care program, a supposed 100 billion cedis, and such item is stated as another thing that a supposed 100 billion will take care for in a period of pandemic, because my understanding is that this intervention is an intervention that is coming to help, particularly in this pandemic period, so that we get out of the pandemic. So why do you add campaign promises? Under the same revitalization, you have review and implement free SHS, planting for food and jobs, 1 district, 1 factory. And all these things are covered under 100 billion facility. So I ask you, what is the 100 billion cedis? Where is the 100 billion cedis? What projects are these 100 billion cedis going to? Are these old projects that we have been hearing from previous budgets that because of our lip service attitude that we have in Ghana, we have not been added, and because of pandemic and because of elections, we should be throwing figures around so that people will say, oh, Charlie, in Europe, there is a 750 billion euro fund. So Ghana too is following suit and earmarking 100 billion cedis. There are other things. You talk of digitization to promote transparency. All these things are interventions Bawumia have been doing since 2017. So if you add it to 100 billion cedis, where is the 100 billion cedis? Because if you look at the real figures out of this 100 billion cedis, Rabiu, I bet you will not be able to account for even about 35 billion cedis as
the most interesting thing about this discussion is we'll be expecting a paper to be produced by NERA, which would be published, and hopefully we would want to be reading all these details in there. So for those who can't watch this, that would be published for them on the NERA website, so they can go and skim through and get some of the pointers that you are mentioning. So
by way of conclusion,
I thought you had concluded.
No, by way of conclusion, I think broadly speaking, some of the things that we saw in this mid-year budget, yes, as Nanayaw said, we have interlaced economics with politics. And some of the data and comparisons made are purely, for lack of better word, purely political, because you have instances where the finance minister will compare 2014 to 2016 average figures to 2017 and 2019. If you are comparing first year or first term of a government, you start from 2013 to 2015. But when it suits you, you pick a period, you make analysis, and you draw conclusion that, okay, we have done better. That aside, I think for Agric, there should be more questions that we should be asking. That why is it that we are spending more in Agric? They are telling us that people have been employed in Agric, but comparatively, comparing the figure now to previous figures, the previous figures are better than the current figure that we have. The next thing is that for free SHS, you see that there has been good improvement, but the other question we should be asking is that in 2018, we had about in excess of 430,000 people enrolled in free SHS as a result of double track. But in 2019-2020 academic year, this 400, in excess of 430,000 people figure has been reduced to 402,000 people. There is a shortage of about 30,000 people, pupils or students compared to the 2018 figure. What happened? At this point, I cannot make a conclusion because I don't know the number of people who sat for exams in 2018 and that percentage of figure out of those who sat for exams who were enrolled in school and those who were not. But these are things that we should be just asking questions about because free SHS is to give access. Now the access door has been opened. Why are we having kind of enrollment figure 2019-2018 a little bit reducing? I'm not making a conclusion yet. This is something that we should be asking so that we will get the response that we will get. The last thing that Nanaia talked about that I want to also touch on is from 2017-2018, especially with the rolling up of NABCO, they told us that there were these NABCO people helping us to assign the addressing what on houses.
Property services. Something.
Yes, so that these people will help us mobilize property taxes. In fact, the man who designed the Ghana app, the GPS Asase app or whatever, the Vodacom guy, told us that as part of the contract, they will be even posting this, if you go to, I don't know how they call it, numbers on walls, because if you go to Europe and other countries, you see every house having a number. So even if you don't know the area, they just give you the...
But not to cut you, I think that particular contract has been given, I think it's under the Ministry of Special Initiative. It's been giving out. So I think they are working.
Then been awarded twice.
It's been given out. It was given in 2018. We didn't see anything in 2018. 2019, it was mentioned. 2020, we are in the midnight of this administration, and we are now still talking about it. Meanwhile, we are a country that needs money. And property tax, as Nanaia said, is one area that we have not explored. So if we need money and we think we can get money from that sector, why are we being lackadaisical in doing the needful so that we get the needed money that we want?
The rich people are in power. That's why.
I think that will be the conclusion. And
I think Rabiu is off.
Since Rabiu is off, I will say very, very thank you to you for joining us. And the mistake that I did was when the conversation started, I didn't record. So maybe we will have just half of our session on the YouTube channel. And hopefully by close of Thursday, Friday, the first draft from the research team, the big-headed guys, Yao and Zeu, is almost ready. So we will incorporate what we have discussed and bring the final report out. Because the budget is in excess of about 32 pages. But the research team will try to condense everything in less than 10 pages so that those who cannot sit long and read so many papers will at least also follow. I think it has been a useful discussion. Thank you for joining us. And our friends and brothers and sisters who joined us via Facebook, we have read your comments and we will make amends in subsequent editions or subsequent meetings. Thank you for your encouragement and we will be waiting on you for more feedback. Thank you. Have a good night.
Elliot, sorry, Bernard. Elliot, we want to have a discussion with you offline.
Okay.
Yeah.
So thank you. Have a good night.
Okay.
Yeah.